Hey there, I'm Sarah from Creative Ramblings. Today I am going to show you how to make an outdoor board game that's double-sided that you, your friends, and family can enjoy all summer long. We are going to start with just a piece of wood, some simple natural supplies, and turn this into a really fun board game. So let's talk about the wood that we're using. This board is about 12 inches square. This is cut from a very long 1x12. You can head to your local hardware store and pick up a long piece of wood and then cut it down to size. You just want to make sure that whatever size you get, you're able to cut it to a square. So this is roughly 12x12, a little bit less. So I've cut it down to a square and I've sanded the edges. Now we're going to stain it to give it a beautiful rich color. Anytime you're staining something, you want to make sure that you take a lint-free cloth and get any dust and particles off of it so you have a nice smooth surface to stain. You want to make sure that you're working on a protected surface, and then we're going to go ahead and put a beautiful black walnut stain on this board. I am just going to brush the stain onto the wood. Always go in the direction of the wood grain and use long, even strokes until everything is covered. Light coats are always best. You can go back and add more coats later. With this particular gel stain, we want to put on one light coat, let it dry for about 2 hours, and then if you want to put another coat on after that, you can come back and reapply. So for this, we're going to do this whole side, and then I'm going to prop it up and come and do these edges here, and then when this part's dry, I'll flip it over and stain the other side. So we want the whole board stained one color, and then we can move on to the next step. All right, it is all dry. I've got it stained on all sides. Now we're going to start making our game board. Now this side is going to be a checkerboard and the other side is going to be a tic-tac-toe board. So this board I said earlier was about a 12x12. It's actually, in all reality, it's 11x11. When you buy a 1x12 board, it's not actually 12 inches wide. Go figure. But it is what it is. So just measure your square and know what you're working with. So 11x11. So the first thing that I'm going to do is figure out how many squares are on a checkerboard. 64, by the way. We want to go 8x8. So 8 squares this way, 8 squares this way. And on this board here, what I've decided to do is to make my measurements nice and easy. There's going to be a 1/2 inch border along all of it. So that way I'm actually working with a 10x10 space. Trust me, it just makes the math a little bit easier when we're going with 10x10 versus 11x11. So I'm just marking off a 1/2 inch square, or a 1/2 inch border along the whole piece with just some painter's tape. Okay, so now I'm left with a workable space of 10x10. And I am gonna start marking off my squares. So I've got a ruler and a pencil here. Each square is gonna be 1 1/4 inches long. So I am just gonna go through here and use my pencil. You can kind of see the pencil on here. Just 1 1/4 inches all the way across. So I've got all my markings that way. And then I'm gonna mark along this way as well, and then I'll tape it off. Okay, so now that everything's marked, I am just gonna grab some tape. Ideally, I would have tape that is 1 1/4 inches wide, but I don't have that on hand, so I am just going to use the next best thing here and tape off some lines. So painting a checkerboard is kind of a process. There's a lot of taping involved, but the taping is going to pay off and allow us to have really crisp lines for our checkers. Okay, so I've gone through and taped it this way. Now we're going to turn it and go the other way. Okay, so after a lot of taping, this is what we end up with here. So we are going to start by just painting the exposed squares in white. So to paint these squares, we are just going to use some white acrylic paint and a paintbrush. Okay. Now we are going to take off just some of these, and there will be a second step in painting this, but the first thing we want to do is just take off some of this paint, let it dry a little bit. So I'm going to start by pulling these off. Okay, so we're gonna leave this 1/2 inch border around the outside. We're gonna let this white dry, and then we're gonna come back and tape over some of the white to fill in. We've got a couple extra squares here that still need to be white. So we're gonna let this dry, come back and finish painting. So now that this is dry, we need to go back and fill in these other squares here so that we have alternating stained wood and white squares. So we're gonna grab that same tape we used before, but this time we're gonna go over the white. Okay, our taping is done. Now any open spot is going to be painted white. Just gonna make sure all my tape is pushed down really well here. Okay, everything's painted. Now, just like we did before, we're gonna pull off the tape while it is still wet, and then we can let this all dry completely. And it's perfectly centered with that border around the outside. Look at that. We're gonna let this dry completely, then we're gonna flip it over and I'll show you how to easily create a tic-tac-toe board on the other side. Our checkerboard is completely dry. Now, the other side is a tic-tac-toe board. This is just a really simple couple straight lines to form a grid. You can measure this out or you can freehand it. So we've got both sides completely dry. Now, in order to protect this and leave it outside, we are going to seal it with some polyacrylic. This is a clear, protective coating. Again, I've made sure that this any dust or anything is off of here. I just used a soft cloth. But I'm going to take this and with the wood grain, just do long strokes. This is going to protect the wood and protect the paint, seal everything in so that this can actually stay outside. So we're gonna do it to both sides and all of the sides along here as well. So while we're waiting for the game board to dry, we are gonna start making our game pieces. And I had said that this is gonna be a really natural feeling, natural looking game board. We are going to use rocks for our game pieces. Now, I just went on a little hunt around my yard and I found rocks. I happen to have rock in my landscaping, so this worked really well for me. So I found a bunch of medium-sized rocks, all kind of the same color and about the same size. These are gonna be great for our tic-tac-toe board. And then I found a whole bunch of little pebbles. Now these pebbles are gonna work for our checkers. For the checkers, you're gonna need 24 total pebbles. And for the tic-tac-toe board, you're gonna need 10 rocks. So for our tic-tac-toe X's and O's, just make sure your rocks are dust-free. I had washed these off earlier and let them dry. Then we're just gonna take a Sharpie and draw our X's and O's right onto the rocks. this Sharpie will stay on here. And again, it gives it that real natural look by just using a single color here. All right, so then we repeat that so we have 5 X's and 5 O's. Now this Sharpie will hold up really well, but you could go over this when it's dry and with maybe a coat of Mod Podge if you wanted it to be a little bit shinier and have be a little more waterproof. But the Sharpie will hold up just fine. So we're gonna set those aside. And now for these pebbles, again, I have 24 of these pebbles. I want a set of red and a set of black for checkers. So this is a great paint to use. So we're gonna take these out in a well-ventilated area and just lay them out and give them a good coat of this high gloss paint. This is a permanent outdoor paint, so it will hold up really well on these rocks. Okay, we've got all of our game pieces ready to go here. These X's and O's we really don't need to do much to, but these are our checkers pieces. We have red and black. Now, one little tiny note about these checker pieces. Normally when you're playing a game of checkers, you move your piece around and when you get to the end, you get kinged. So you get a second one put on top. But that doesn't really work so well with rocks. So what we're gonna do is just grab a black Sharpie here, and on the back side of each red one, we're just gonna put a little dot. So as you're moving your checker along and you get to the end, when you get kinged, you can turn it over. So we want to be able to follow the rules of the game here. On the black game pieces, I'm just going to take a little dot of white paint and do the same thing for these. All right, so we got our chessboard outside here ready to play. Nora's just putting all the red pieces on. And you can see on these pieces, we have that black dot on the bottom and we have the white dot on the bottom of the black ones. And we are ready to play a game of checkers outside. We've also got those X's and O's in there, so we can flip this over and play a game of tic-tac-toe as well. Hope you like this project and it has inspired you to create a really fun outdoor board game for your home. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next time.